I wanted to tell about two Catholic concepts, the concepts of the original sin and the concept of purgatory. Because even people from the Catholic background sometimes do not have a clear understanding of the difference between the original sin and the personal sin. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes my students tell me, okay, so if I'm baptized, I got rid of the original sin, so Jesus got rid of the original sin for me, so now I'm going to heaven. And I said, I'm sorry, now you still can go to hell, because baptism does not make you a perfect person right away. So here is the thing. Number one, the doctrine of the original sin dates back in Western Christianity to the 4th century, to the guy, to the famous Christian theologian, Saint Augustine. Before Saint Augustine, the doctrine was not clearly spelled out. Of course, if you read the letters of the Apostle Paul, you will find some hints at the connection between Adam and Jesus. You know, we all die in Adam, and we all are reborn in Jesus. But the concept and the term, the original sin, is not in the Bible explicitly. So it was part of the development of Christian theology. We have to distinguish between what is in the Bible and what was created by Christian theologians. For example, the word Trinity is not explicitly in the Bible. The word original sin is not explicitly in the Bible. The word purgatory is not explicitly in the Bible. However, in the Bible, for example, there is mentioning of the Holy Spirit, of God. Jesus calls God his Father, and of Jesus himself. So the three persons of the Trinity are there, but the word the Trinity is not there. So we have to distinguish between Christian scriptures on the one hand and the interpretations of those scriptures by Christian theologians on the other hand. So both concepts, the concept of the original sin and of the purgatory, both concepts are the result of Christian theological developments. This is the first thing that we have to remember. Now, the second thing is that the concept of the original sin is based on the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. This story is shared by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. However, all those three religions have different interpretations of the same story. And that is another thing. Well, we have to distinguish again between the scriptures and the interpretations. So Jews and Muslims interpret the story of Adam and Eve simply as the symbolic indication that human nature is twofold, that we all have desires to do evil and desires to do good, and we are trying to make a choice. And if you make the wrong choice, you will be punished. So the idea of divine retribution is the key idea of the Bible that runs throughout the whole book, beginning from the story of Adam and Eve up to the book of Revelation. The concept, again, the concept of the original sin is based on the story of Adam and Eve, and in Judaism and Islam, the same story is interpreted in very different way. Again, in Judaism and Islam, this is the story of human beings being torn apart by opposite desires, to do evil and to do good. And if you do something bad, you will be punished. If you do something good, you will be rewarded. So the topic is divine retribution, which is the main topic of the Bible. Now, Christianity is the only religion that developed its unique interpretation of the story. And as I said, this interpretation was developed by Saint Augustine in the 4th century. Now, Saint Augustine is considered to be one of the greatest Christian theologians, but personally, I dislike him. I don't like the guy. And I tell you why. First of all, if you have read his biography, his spiritual biography, Confessions, you will see I was amazed at the fact that the guy was preparing to become a Christian. And he, in one of the chapters, he would recall one episode from him being very young, like a boy, stealing apples with his friends from some neighbors. And he was so ashamed. Oh my God, I was stealing apples. So it was the whole chapter full of those kind of exhortations, or God forgive me, I stole one apple from you, etc., etc. And in another chapter, he mentioned in passing that in order to become a Christian, he divorced his wife, basically kicked her out of his house, along with his son, and have not seen them since. It is really amazing. Not feeling shame about divorcing your house, your wife, who would not have any means of support after that, and feeling extreme shame for stealing one apple. That reminds me of Americans who are taking care of their pets more than they are taking care of their soldiers that come from Iraq. It's really amazing. So St. Augustine came up with his unique interpretation of the original sin. And again, it was about divine retribution. According to St. Augustine, had Adam and Eve followed the will of God, therefore they would have been rewarded. And however, they did not follow the will of God and they were punished. Now, in the beginning of this trial, or covenant, the first couple had free will. And what is free will? Free will is the capacity to do good and the capacity to do evil, both capacities. Now, had Adam and Eve, according to St. Augustine, chose to follow the will of God, they would have been rewarded, and as a reward, God would have eliminated from humans the capacity to do evil. So as a result of that, humans would become like angels. In classical Christian theology, angels do not have free will. They only could follow the will of God.
Yeah, Baha'u'llah says the angels of heaven know no will but the will of God. He also says that.
Yeah. So, however, Adam and Eve decided not to follow the will of God. And as a punishment, according to St. Augustine, God has removed from them the capacity to do good. As a result, human nature was distorted. And this distortion was such that it spread to Adam and Eve's posterity. So all humans, basically, who are born after Adam and Eve's fall or original sin, had only one natural inclination, and that is the inclination to sin. So that's the classical concept of the original sin. And it has nothing to do with us. We inherit this from our forefathers. We have no tools or instruments to fight it. We are completely helpless. Our nature is distorted. And that's why, according to St. Augustine, Jesus had to come to this earth in order to restore our original nature. So here we have this connection between the original sin, on the one hand, and Jesus being the Messiah, his death and resurrection on the other hand, because it was Jesus's mission, according to St. Augustine and Catholicism. It was Jesus's mission to make the human nature right again for those who accept him. So in classical Christianity, when you are baptized, this baptism washes away the implications of the original sin. That's why in classical Christianity, in St. Thomas Aquinas's, let's say, times, those who were not baptized could not have achieved heaven because of the original sin. Hence the problem of children who were not baptized, hence the problem of the people who lived before Christ, hence the problem of people like Moses, Abraham, great Old Testament heroes who could not reach paradise because still their nature was somehow affected by the original sin.
Yes, in your video, that shocked the heck out of me when you said that even Moses and the other ones had to be saved by Christ, which that never occurred to me because of that second tier of purgatory, or what, the three tiers of purgatory. That was fascinating.
Well, hold on a second. These are not this is not part of the purgatory. This is medieval Catholicism, and St. Thomas Aquinas, in order to resolve those problems, ended up with the concept of the limbo of children, the limbo of the fathers, or Abraham's bosom. And these two realms were not part of the purgatory. They were part of hell, because purgatory is already beyond hell, and you can get into purgatory only if you are baptized. So if you've read Dante, Divine Comedy, you remember that Virgil is his guide in hell. But as soon as Dante is going to the purgatory, Virgil says, "I am sorry, it is not available to me." And Beatrice appears and guides him through the purgatory and heaven. So yes, according to St. Thomas, there was a limbo of children for those children who were not baptized, the limbo of the fathers. And the difference between those two sections of hell from other sections of hell was that the limbo of children was designed in such a way that children would not suffer there. They would not be tormented because of God's justice. So although they were not baptized, however, they did not sin, so therefore they would not be tormented. And the limbo of the fathers was especially for those Old Testament heroes. But this limbo, according to St. Thomas Aquinas, was temporary. So when Jesus, according to the gospel, when he dies before his resurrection, the first thing that the gospel describes is that Jesus descends into hell. And according to classical Christian theology, the purpose of this descent was actually to save those Old Testament characters. And as a result of that, the limbo of the fathers that does not exist. It did exist, but it does not exist now because, Jesus liberated those people. But the limbo of the children still exists, according to medieval Catholic theology. Now, about the purgatory. The word purgatory also does not exist in the Bible, but I personally think the idea of the purgatory, the origin of this idea was quite simple. In the early centuries of the Christian faith, Christians, like all idealists, believed that when you are baptized, you become a totally new creature. And if you are baptized, you are going to heaven. Then centuries rolled by, and they realized that there are such people as bad Christians. What a surprise! And so according to classical views, if you are not baptized, you go to hell. But if you are baptized, you go to heaven. But what if you are a bad person? So hence the purgatory. The purgatory is kind of a an intermediary state that is associated with heaven, where a person could expiate his or her sins that are not grave enough. And here we come to the distinction between original sin and personal sin. So the fact that you are baptized according to Christian theology does not mean that you will necessarily end up in heaven. You still can go to hell. And if you read Dante's Divine Comedy, you will find many popes in hell, for example. So Catholicism distinguishes between venial sins and mortal sins. So there are sins that could be forgiven. There are sins that cannot be forgiven. So the fact that you are baptized and you are Christian now, again, this washes away the original sin and restores your original nature, which means that you could now, what is the word? You could now resist evil and choose good. But this does not mean that you will do that all the time. And now it's your personal responsibility to live your life in such a way as not to end up in hell, and preferably end up in heaven, but if not in purgatory, if you still have sinned and you did not die in grace with the Catholic Church. Now, if you compare this kind of complex system of medieval Catholicism with Baha'i faith, I would say that Baha'i view is close to heaven and purgatory without hell. So for Baha'is, everybody will be saved in the end, on the one hand. So salvation is universal, because otherwise God would not have been all-powerful after all. But on the other hand, people who are bad, who have done bad things, should be punished, and that is God's justice. But this punishment does not mean that they, will suffer forever, literally. They still have the chance of salvation. As Abdul Baha says, that God always, God is all merciful and could prefer mercy over justice. That God could save even, evil persons. And my final comment about this is that Catholicism, after the Second Vatican Council in 1960s, underwent profound changes, including conceptual changes. Catholics still believe in the original sin. Catholics still believe in the purgatory. But Catholics do not believe in the limbo of children. Catholics do not believe that you have to be Christian or Catholic in order to be saved. After the Second Vatican Council, Catholics believe that Jews can be saved without being converted to Catholicism, that people of different religions could also be saved. So Catholic doctrine was very much liberalized after the Second Vatican Council. And I think that is a step forward. So the last comment is about orthodoxy versus Catholicism. Not all Christian branches actually accept the Augustinian doctrine of the original sin. Orthodox Christianity never accepted that. And in fact, for Orthodox Christianity, Saint Augustine is not a saint. So Orthodox Christian understanding of heaven, hell, and the story of Adam and Eve, I think, is identical to Baha'i understanding. For Orthodox Christians, the story of Adam and Eve is simply the spiritual metaphor of the dual nature of human beings, when Adam is the symbol of our lower animal nature, and Christ is the symbol of our spiritual or higher nature. And the heaven and hell are spiritual metaphors of being close or distant to God, but not in terms of the space continuum. The way Orthodox Christians describe afterlife is when people die, all people encounter God's love. But those people who are in tune with God's love experience this love as paradise. And those people who are not in tune with God's love experience this as hell, as fire.